All right, now we are continuing with the third chapter. The third chapter, there are 6 chapters altogether, and this is the beginning of the third. We learned yesterday about Rabbi Hernandez, Sagan Kohanim. No, did we learn this yesterday? No, we didn't. Yesterday we learned here. This is what we learned yesterday. This is what we're going to learn today. Akabi ibn Halal, remember? So look at 3 things you won't come to do a sin. Where you're coming from, where you're going, who's going to judge you. Remember, we learned that yesterday. Okay, now let's do today. Rabbi Hanania, Sgan HaKohanim. Rabbi Hanania, this is right in the end of the second temple. Now, things are not going so much in chronological order. And so we're going back a little bit to the end of the second temple. Rabbi Hanina, the Sgan HaKohanim, he said, you should pray for the welfare of the country. She'ilmole, because Mora'o, that if people weren't afraid of the government, Ishet Re'eu Chayam below, people would swallow one another up. It would surround. Each person would swallow up his friend alive. They wouldn't even bother killing them. They would enjoy feeling them going down their throat. That's this whole insanity that's going on in America now. Defund the police. Get rid of the police, it's going to be just total insanity that I can't understand how anybody agrees with it. Nevertheless, that's what Rabbi Hanina, the Sgan of the Kohanim, said. Let's see, here we go. We have over here a little bit of a Bartanura. You have to pray for the welfare of the country, even a non-Jewish country. But we're not just talking about Israel. Why? Because if it wasn't for government and for policemen, people would swallow each other up alive. Like it says, Adam kadage. There's a sentence in Habakkuk that man is made like fish in the sea. Just like fish in the sea, the big one swallows up the small ones. Also people, if it wasn't for the fear of the kingship, the bigger person would swallow up the smaller one. Which we see that's what it was with the Stalin and with all these other Mao Zedong. All right, back. Rabbi Hanania ben Taridon. Now, Rabbi Hanania ben Tardion, he was also in the end of the second temple. He was one of those that saw, he was one of the 10 Harugim Malchus we talk about on Yom Kippur. He was one. So he saw the temple being destroyed because of Sinat Chinam. The people hated each other. And because of that, it brought destruction. So he said like this, 2 people that sit together and they don't have any words of Torah between them. 2 Jews, they don't have words of Torah. Harizem Moshev Leitzim. It's called a group of scoffers. Like it says, Moshev Leitzim Lo Yashav. It says a group of scoffers don't sit. Right? People love that. Nowadays, you don't have to have groups of scoffers. You can do it in your own house. You buy a newspaper and you see everything bad about everybody else. In any case, waste of time. There's no bigger waste of time than that. It says, look at the media, look at the, just scoffing at people, scoffing, laughing. Moshe, except for the people that are supposed to scoff at. Moshe Leitzim Lo Yashav. Avol Shnayim. That's 2 people that sit together and they don't learn Torah. They don't have words of Torah between them. This is called a group of scoffers, of negative people. Avol Shnayim, but 2 people that they sit and they do have words of Torah. So it says God's presence rests between them. Like it says, Oznid Baru Yirei Hashem. Then there was, because a sentence in Prophet Malachi. Then there was speak together. Those who fear God, Ish El Rei, one person to the other, 2 people. And God will listen and he'll hear, and he'll write a book of remembrance in front of him to those people who fear him and they consider his name. One person that sit, two people that sit and learn Torah. What about one person? All I know is that two people that sit and learn Torah, God is with them. What about Manai and Shafilu Echad? What about one person learning Torah? You're doing a mitzvah, learning Torah, but God is not with you? He says, he says, yes, he is. How do I know that even one person that sits and learns Torah, that God gives him a reward? Now, it's not exactly the same thing as the SHECHINA being revealed. This is like God gets a special pleasure from that. The difference between the SHECHINA and the reward, and the Tanya talks about it. But it's a much bigger thing, this idea of the SHECHINA, God's presence. He says, nevertheless, he gets a reward. Like it says, Yoshev Badad, a person who sits alone, but you don't, ki natal alav. If he sits alone and he is quiet, that he gets a present. We'll see what this means. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. V'yidom, what does it mean, dom? It means that he reads quietly. Lashon kol damama daka. It says that Ezekiel, the prophet Elijah, that he went up on the mountain, he heard the small voice, quiet voice. Because if you learn with somebody else, you learn out loud. You have to speak to them, he speaks back to you. If you're alone, you don't say as loud as you do. So it says if he sits alone and he reads quietly to himself, he will get a reward. It is natal alav, he takes the whole Torah on himself, he gets a reward. So it's good to learn Torah with somebody else. But if you have nobody else, it's also good to learn alone. Not as good, but certainly good. All right, have a good day with Mashiach now. Thank you very much. What do we learn from here? Pray for the government. If there was no law and order, there would be total destruction. And learn Torah with someone else. Even if you learn alone, it's very good, but it's better with two people. Shalom Avracha. See you tomorrow, 8:15 in the morning.